your question and you'd like to chime in with a reflection or a dream that you had last night, I can't stress enough, we want to hear from you. So feel free to write in the chat box or come off of mute. So Eleanor, let's take this first question here. Why is it so important to be able to talk about your achievements? Can you talk about specific changes that happened in your life once you felt empowered to do so?
Yeah, such a great question. And maybe we should start by really thinking about what is self-promotion and what do we mean by self-promotion. So it's really about making anything that we're proud of, whether it's something professional or personal, visible, making it visible, whether it's in a written form through social media, article writing, blogs, or in person by one-to-one meetings, public speaking, workshops. And it can be done externally, so public facing, but also internally with your company, with your network. So yeah, I'm happy to start with the kind of example of how self-promotion helped me. And again, this is a process. This is not something that I woke up one day and decided to do self-promotion. It's really a process. But you know, I love volunteering for charity. It's something that I'm really, really passionate about. And I often speak about my volunteering activities quite publicly to amplify the work of the charities that I volunteer for and really help and encourage people to donate. So one of the people that's seen my work, my posts, was really impressed with the work that I was doing for these charities, and he got in touch. And a few years later, when I was searching for my next opportunity, they were the one that got me the job to help me, that I can help them with startups, with business development for startups. So this is just one example of many, many examples. It could be also not just a job opportunity. It could be me speaking to someone about a passion that I have, and then they find a kind of course and they say, you know what, this is for you, Eleanor. We want you to take this course. So it could be about anything. And it's not surprising that it's really helpful for us, because we know that 85% of roles and opportunities come from networking. And there is a strong, strong connection between building your network and self-promotion. Because when we confidently share our knowledge and our professional value, for example, by holding training, public speaking, mentoring, we attract people who are interested in our work to really approach us. And it's essential to making us visible for really golden opportunities, whatever is your objective. And also our workplaces are becoming increasingly global and competitive. So it's really perhaps more important now than ever before that we're able to show our unique value and build this skill set so we could effectively compete on a global scale. And many people that I speak to, they actually can very much relate to the fact that self-promotion is not all self-serving. Doesn't only help us in our professional or personal setting. It also helps amplify the work that we do. Because when you put something into words, whether verbally or in a written form, it really helps to solidify it and adds that extra layer of importance, which then help our organization and network, because it creates more opportunities for partnerships, funding, recognition. And it is not just about sharing our knowledge, you know, the kind of ready-made knowledge that we have or our achievements, but it's also about sharing ideas and passions as we build them, you know, because it's really about leveraging that collective knowledge and call for people to collaborate with us, to brainstorm. And another thing I want to say about the kind of why is your successes may seem really trivial to you, but they may not be to others. So don't dismiss the strength that you have or the knowledge just because it's second nature to you. What you have to share may really influence and inspire others. And so the other day, I just want to give an example, because the other day I was mentoring a lovely, lovely lady. And when I shared an example from my life about things that seem trivial to me, like volunteering for a charity or even standing up to someone at my work or dealing with a tough conversation, he actually found these things quite meaningful and helpful. But I never had the time to stop and think about these successes, celebrate them, let alone promote them. And you know, I find this interesting that we all know that self-promotion is an important tool for us to progress, but very few feel comfortable doing that. And we actually also sometimes don't feel comfortable listening to people self-promote. So just to say, this is a skill and we need to work on it. It's almost like a muscle that we need to work and build on it. And you won't always get it right. And, at the beginning, it might feel a little bit odd, but it's really about finding your own voice and get more comfortable self-promoting in a way that feels true to you. And I'll give a few kind of tips later on.
Wow, you're hitting so many gems here. I just want to say thank you for highlighting that, that this is about connecting and also interconnecting, right? So I think that the reason that self-promotion leaves this like icky residue in our mouths is because we've seen the bad apples do it and we don't want any part of that, right? We're like, oh, I don't feel comfortable doing that, or I don't want to do it unless you specifically work in publicity or specifically work in marketing, right? And I love that you speak about it as a muscle and training that muscle, but also holistically, right? Like you can take a bunch of illegal drugs to pump up your muscles, but what good is that going to do for your body? Versus, building a holistic practice of training and having it also self-serve, but also serve a community. I love the way that you're putting this in a holistic way. So thank you for that. I want to listen to some of our listeners, their current journeys right now with self-promoting. Can you just write in the chat box on a scale from 1 to 3, how comfortable are you all with networking? Let's just say with social media, like self-promoting on social media. 1, like you're totally not into it. And 3, you're totally into it. So let's see where we are in the world of networking. So, all right, we've got some 2s, 3s, 5s. Awesome. 2, 1, trying to get to 2. All right. So Eleanor, it's a really touchy topic here with social media and how to promote. Do you have any tips just going in now, seeing where we are? So we've got a couple of 1s, we've got a below 0, we've got a 6 and a 2. Awesome. Okay, so Eleanor, I'll pass the mic to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I also started from, I guess, a 2 or a 3. Some people, for them, self-promoting is worse than going to the dentist. It's really, as you said, it's like cringeworthy. But it's about changing that mindset and the tool set. And that's what we are really trying to do here. We are trying to understand and challenge the social perceptions and the narrative around self-promotion, and then to learn how to communicate those achievements effectively and authentically. And it's right what you said about being a muscle, but it's very, very subjective. So everybody might feel, everyone might feel very different about certain platforms. And these numbers might be right about social media, but they might be higher. The people might feel, better self-promoting in a meeting, in a team meeting, or in WhatsApp to their boss, or, public speaking, or doing a workshop, or writing an article. There could be so many different ways. It's just about being aware. So I'd love to, to understand from you kind of what is holding you back from self-promoting. If you can write 1 word in the chat, 1 word to describe why do you avoid self-promoting. I'd love to kind of see the words rolling.
All right, so we have attention, we've got bragging, fear of judgment. Keep it coming, y'all. Let's see what else. Arrogance.
Yes.
Authenticity, value.
Finding that voice. Yes, absolutely. Yes, so I see timing, not knowing when it's appropriate. So this is incredible, because these things come back again and again and again. So you're definitely not alone. So many people feel like you, and from personal experience, you can really overcome this. So generally speaking, there are 3 stories that we often tell ourselves about self-promotion, which really not serving us. And that's what I will really try to do today, really challenge those stories. So the first story, it's not okay to talk about my accomplishments. And that's the fear of bragging that you've written here. And the second story is, I don't need to talk about my accomplishments. I just need to work hard. And the third story is, my accomplishments are too meaningless, and I can see here the imposter syndrome, are too meaningless to talk about. I'm actually not good enough, not skilled enough, not experienced enough to be sharing this. So let's start with the first story. It's not okay to talk about my accomplishments because people will say that I'm boasting or bragging. For example, in job interviews or in team meetings, I personally used to be afraid to come across as a show-off. And so whenever I spoke about my achievements, I completely downplayed and underplayed the role that I had in contributing to the success of a project. Now, when I researched, all the material and facilitated so many workshops, I realized that one key takeaway, if I want you to kind of memorize it, is this is not bragging if it's based on facts. You have absolutely all the right to talk about the facts if they are true and in honesty. At a young age, we've been taught to be humble, and I teach my girls that. But the problem is not about the humility. The problem is that very few of us ever learn the social skills of how to reconcile the virtue of humility with the need to talk about our accomplishments later in life, when the world starts asking us, what are you good at? Why should we hire you? What have you achieved? What we are doing here is really changing the story that we are telling ourselves. Self-promotion does not contradict the virtue of humility. It doesn't have to be arrogant. If you've done something that you are proud of, worked hard on a project, accomplished a goal, made a difference in some way, why should you share the facts with others? It's really about educating others on the skills and value that you bring to the table, whether they are, large achievements or small achievements. And that's what it's about. And I hope that you will take this kind of key takeaway from today.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Eleanor, I want to flag some things that are happening in the chat box here. So we have a question here from John. Do certain cultures have ingrained biases at play? As a Brit, we often do a good line in self-deprecation.
Yes, so certainly, I mean, the issue and culture and self-promotion is certainly the differences between different cultures play a role in how we can then communicate, whether we are Brits who are going to the States or whether we coming from the Middle East to other regions. But I think here it's really important to understand that people need to be aware of your accomplishments. So it's really about finding that balance about what is right for you and what is right in the culture where you are. So if we're talking now about culture and self-promotion, so the first thing to do is really challenge our assumptions and understand what's really appropriate in your specific environment, industry, and workplace, regardless of the stereotype. So when it comes to self-promotion in the States, for example, a New York office might be very different to Kansas or Iowa office. So it's really about understanding that specific context of where you are, and also to acknowledge that we are living in a very, very global society. So many of the companies that we work in, even if they are based in regions that are less individualistic, may be influenced by other cultures. So if there is a cultural kind of clash, I would personally start by getting into the habit of promoting each other in the team. So to make it into a norm. And it's obviously an effective strategy if you are fortunate to be with colleagues that you trust in a supportive team. And you can also form a group of supporters who can then advocate for you via recommendations, posts, feedback, and then you can reciprocate. Or you can self-promote by way of telling a story that's funny or relatable, how you overcame difficulties or had unusual experiences. Stories really are very memorable. And, obviously, if you're honest about what you've achieved, there's no harm in, telling a story. And so I think that's more or less covers the issue of culture in this context. Also the thought leadership, if you can develop some expertise and then deliver a training or a workshop, it doesn't, it's a kind of a soft self-promotion that your culture around you, even if it doesn't encourage self-advocacy, might accept, and you might accept as well. So, and finally, as I said before, understand your values and what levels and tools of self-promotion are right for you, regardless of where you're from or where you're working. And on that, I want to share that, when I came from the kind of the first self-promotion workshop that I did, I thought to myself, right, I need to overcome all this discomfort and start writing articles and blogs. But immediately I realized, I understood this is not me. I feel less comfortable with these mediums that also take a lot of my time. I am more comfortable on LinkedIn or on one-on-one meeting, on a team meeting, and kind of gradually, I practice and come out of my comfort zone. So, you know, in a similar way, one would feel more comfortable in a group setting, one-on-one, and one would feel more comfortable on social media, and the other one prefers public speaking. It's very much about you, and not just about the culture where you are.
Yes, I love that you're bringing it back to us. That's beautiful. Sometimes we get lost in just this, what is the standard of productivity and what does success mean? And I find that I'm questioning that all the time for years. What does success mean? Does it mean, you know, what I was taught in elementary school, high school, university, last week? I find that it's very important, at least for me, to reflect on that so that I'm not just trying to meet the status quo and then keeping a part of myself from whatever work that I'm doing. I just also want to flag some things that are happening in the chat box here. Thank you everyone for writing in the chat box. I love this engagement. So Julia writes, I really like the concept brought up earlier that we have all unique skills and purpose, helping me reconcile with humility. Great, Julia. And then Vandana says, I'm from India. I can hear my teacher's voice saying, don't be overconfident, even now. And then Julia writes in response to that, or her mother's voice, that's great, but don't brag. That's from the upper Midwest. So we've got some folks just telling us about their journeys, and I appreciate you all. We've got Carrie here that writes, perhaps getting more comfortable is working on it with your boss in one-on-ones. I used to have to bring accomplishments to each meeting. I've fallen out of practice, but his motive was having fought to fight in the calibration sessions. I'm not sure if I'm reading that correctly. Carrie, if you'd like to hop off of mute and chime in. But Eleanor, I'd love to hear your reflections on some of these comments in the chat box.
I mean, this is really brilliant, and I really appreciate you sharing all of that. And also to go back to your point, Mariela, when you said, you know, what is success? Success is what you think is successful for you. So, and that goes back to the point that I mentioned, when you share something, when you put it out there verbally, it really helps to solidify it, to make it really special. So whether you are in the process of you know, writing your thesis for university, or you already kind of got your graduation, it doesn't really matter. It is what it means for you. And about the bragging and the issue that we have these voices. So as I said before, this is about talking about facts. And I want to share here a few kind of tips, if that's okay, to share tips about doing, talking about our achievements in a meaningful and effective way, that maybe kind of to shush that noises in our mind that this is, I'm too confident, I am, bragging now. So the first thing I would say is use the magic word because, your why. Talk about what drives you. And also here, I would like to remind ourselves that we are more than our jobs. We can really draw on other parts of our lives when we self-promote. Share a story that's memorable, that brought you to where you are today. I would love you to kind of write here everything that you are proud of. And this is really part of the workshop that I deliver. And I'd love you to kind of try and kind of play with that and see how you hear with this intimate setting that we are, if you want to share. And the second kind of tip about making it effective and meaningful is write about facts and back it with data. Share numbers and specific information, because people don't tend to argue with data. For example, you can write, I was responsible for the internal comm strategy, which contributed to an increase in 10% profit. And I know it sounds dry, but these sometimes help us, because this is a fact. No one can argue with this. This is not my feeling of, thinking that I am amazing. This is, I did that. Own it. And add the implications for you, for the team, for the company. This means that we now can afford, or I'm really now motivated to. So create that continuity and emphasize the learning and the hard work, because people don't always appreciate that our achievements are a result of long and hard process. They see the post of I did that and they think, how did she do that, And you could say, for example, I got great feedback on my media review. But then you can add, this is setting up a clear strategy with my manager over a year of work really helped me achieve that. So really try and relate that to what you've learned, to the process, because talking about the effort makes us more relatable. And start a conversation. It doesn't all have to be about you. You can open it up to people, ask a question, invitation to collaborate, to learn, to help others, and also make others feel valued by thanking them and giving a big shout out to your internal or external partners. And no one can argue with you when you are saying thank you to them. And if it's written, I would recommend letting someone read it, just to make sure that you're not downplaying your achievements, because sometimes we do tend to do that. So I want to just give a quick example for myself, because I was recently nominated for a Women in Tech Award. And I knew that promoting it, thank you, Mariela, I knew that promoting it would really be the driving force to amplifying my work and securing future opportunities. But instead of saying, I was nominated, please vote, I focused on trying to inspire others to take action to promote women in tech. So I spoke about my why, what drives me to do what I do, partly because I have daughters and I deeply care about their future. I spoke about ways in which people can collaborate with me. And I added that I'm always looking to learn from others and open for collaboration. And I also thanked others. And since then, new people have really approached me and to lead workshop and be even a chapter leader of a woman executive network. But I can tell you that it took a lot for me to put that post up. It wasn't easy, but I really did that. And I let other people read it just to make sure that the tone is right, because, people that know you know if the tone is right for you. So I just wanted to put it out there to share that, we all have the challenge, and it's really hard work, that self-promotion. And I normally do kind of share my time. I do 80-20. So 80% of the time I spend doing the work, and 20% of the time I spend talking about it, promoting it, sharing it. And as I said before, it's not all self-serving, because the more I amplify, my work, the more I amplify the impact of my work. So this is on that. And going back to the stories that we tell ourselves, it's really clear that unlike what we might like to think, good work doesn't speak for itself. Your work alone may not be enough to get you noticed. So it's really on you to put your word out there and to own your achievements, own everything that you've achieved until today. And as I said before, it doesn't have to be big things. It could be also small daily things. And I'm happy to talk about when we get to imposter syndrome, because this very much relates to imposter syndrome, how we should really tackle that by keeping a log of all of our successes.
I totally agree. Eleanor, thank you so much for diving in deep there. Tiffany wrote earlier, I've learned you can't assume people know what you do and how you do it. That's why it's good to self-promote so they will understand. And I'm just curious to know, because of course it is hard to do that, like you said, that initial post, and also congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
And I love the way that you flavor it with, making it more about visibility, essentially, right? So it's not just self-serving, it's also, essentially helping your daughters in the long run. I love that. That is how you focus on it. And I think that if we can be more holistic in thought, I love to speak about emotional intelligence in the workplace. And this is hitting it on the head with, being emotionally intelligent about self-promoting, not just doing it to get more money or to get more fame or to, very superficial reasons. It's going in deep, and it's really, going at the roots of why do we have to even do things like this? Because historically speaking, X, Y, Z. And I find that passion also generates feedback that will help us grow. My question to you is, do you reward yourself, for having to do these, really big posts, let's say, that you have to self-promote because it is difficult for some of us? Is there a way that if there's someone who is fearful of that, or if it generates some sort of anxiety, how can they, how can we, I'll put myself in the pool as well, how can we reward ourselves after going over that big obstacle of, putting ourselves out there?
So it's incredible what you just asked, because it's actually rewarding ourselves for our achievements in a way, because this is also an achievement to overcome your discomfort of self-promoting. So one of the things that I tend to do with, all of my achievements, I really try, especially, now with COVID is hard, but really try to celebrate them. So if it's a post that you've done, so you can either buy yourself something small that you can then look at it, an object that you can then see, and it reminds you of your success. Or you could, if it's really about a post about something that you want to celebrate, you can even go for a drink with a friend and celebrate it. And it's important to have a group. It doesn't have to be a big group, but just a group of supporters, of people who really root for you. And this gives you the confidence to move forward. And I love the comment that I see here about commitment. It's certainly a commitment to self-promote. But it's something that becomes almost intrinsic to your process of working. It's really a strong part of all that you do.
Yes, and I love that. I mean, we live in a world now where, at least, if we're working in the industries, the hustle and bustle, we have everything in our Google calendars or whatever calendar you use. And it's like, well, yeah, let's put some self-promotion time in our calendar. So I love that you have this 80% of doing the work and 20% of, sharing the work. Great. So actually, this is a great moment because I like to practice what we preach, and I like to, put things into movement during these chats. So if you feel called to do so, go ahead and write your preferred way of connecting in the chat box, so that, well, we're all here trying to, self-promote and to be more comfortable and confident in that. So I think that right now we can take some of Eleanor's, tips on encouraging each other. So feel free to write your LinkedIn or your email, whatever preferred way that you like to connect. And maybe, put a goal for yourself to reach out to one or two and see how we can connect. So you're definitely welcome to connect with me as well on LinkedIn. And Eleanor, we'll give you some time in the end to share how you prefer to be connected with as well. In the meantime, let's move on to this next question. Why do we find it uncomfortable to self-promote? How can I distinguish between showcasing my achievements and showboating? Any tips for finding a way to both show your enthusiasm and competencies in a way that fits when you know you are too modest? It's easier to let your work speak for itself, but sometimes that is not enough.
Yeah, this is really good questions. And the thing is, we talked about, the how to make it more effective and meaningful, but I'd like to really talk about why, in some cases, some people feel uncomfortable to self-promote, and really understand that this is all society. It's really all society. And the more we understand that, the more we'll be able to see that it's not us. And we can really try and change that mindset. So there was a researcher named Rodman, and he coined the term feminine modesty norms. And these terms refers to social norms that expect women to celebrate other people's achievements, but not their own. So it is really not surprising that I've noticed, and also that research has shown, that oftentimes in collaborative contexts, women are less likely to take credit for their achievements and give more credit to others, which really impacts their chance to get new opportunities. And it's not just a gender issue. It really impacts a lot of people, many of them from underrepresented groups as well. And it really affects not just the behavior of the individual, but also how the individual behavior is then perceived in the workplace. So there is this catch-22, right? And I saw that you also spoke about judgment there. That, to be successful, we know that we need to make our achievements known. But if we talk about them, we may face a backlash, which then makes it really uncomfortable for us to try again. So we clearly have a long way as a society to change these perceptions. And we can really only do it by combining the raising of awareness to these social feminine modesty norms and unconscious biases that we all, by the way, hold, and also through our own action. Be mindful and also include others in the conversation, and invite others to speak about, their achievements without the fear of backlash. This is, as much as your responsibility to promote for yourself, it's also your responsibility to then include others, because, the more we include people, the more diverse and inclusive society we will have. And this is why the I Am Remarkable workshop that I mentioned before runs all over the world, I think over 130 countries, attended by 150,000 people. So we can really help and raise awareness and challenge these existing beliefs, and encourage us to be also role model in how we behave and also in how we self-promote.
And I love that you are bringing in your daughters in this conversation. And for those of us who don't have children, I mean, we have to be mindful is to think not only of yourself, right? So we have to think about the generations that come, and especially in these times when a lot of our actions as consumers is very, self invested, let's say. And so I love that, even starting from this perspective of, okay, working and being inclusive in how you promote and self promote and include everyone on your team, or people, who are like-minded and share those passions, how that can then have a ripple effect in, thinking about more people, being more inclusive in general in your lifestyle. I know I'm kind of throwing a wide net out there, but I also believe that, when we start with ourselves, it does have this ripple effect, and hopefully it will do some good and change how we are doing things globally.
Exactly, and we can do it in very simple ways. It's really about, invite people to present their ideas if you see that they're keeping quiet, acknowledging accomplishments of others, whether publicly or privately, depending on what they prefer, or ask probing questions. When someone talks a lot about the we, less on the I, ask them how did they feel about the task or the project that they took on, if they enjoyed it. So really give voice to everyone.
Absolutely. All right, so let's move on to this next question here. Again, if you feel like you want to come off of mute, feel free to do so. We've got just a little under half an hour left, so I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, continue to keep the chat box on fire. I love all the engagement. So let's move on to this next question, Eleanor. I have a lot of trouble talking about my achievements. Sometimes I'm not even sure if what I've done is considered an achievement. I definitely struggle with imposter syndrome and need to work on my confidence. How do I get better at these things? And I would just love for you to dive in deep on imposter syndrome, because I feel like it's something that we've created in the modern world. It's kind of like this taboo even. So feel free to take your time talking about that.
Yes, absolutely. And I'd love it if you can also share in the chat box some examples of when imposter syndrome kicked in for you, or for other people that I'd love to see some examples here, so we feel that we are not alone in this, which we obviously not. And this actually relates to the third story that we tell ourselves, that we are not credible enough, to self-promote or to share our accomplishments or to do certain things. And we are definitely not alone. 70% of people suffer from imposter syndrome, men and women, even if by all objective standards, they are incredibly successful and accomplished. It could be journalists, ambassadors, actors, professors. And I read the other day that Sheryl Sandberg, David Bowie, Serena Williams, they all still have that fear of being found out as not having the best skills and experience. And it is so common that it's almost a way of being, really. And it's important to remind ourselves that we're not alone in this. And it comes from a combination of a few factors. So first of all, insecurities about ourselves that we fear are true. And then the negative things that we hear from others, whether it's colleagues, managers, friends, family, things that people sometimes don't even intend to insult you or to say something negative for you, and that's going to stick. But it also comes from a larger society context and culture, the negative messages that society tells us about ourselves. So when does it happen normally? It often happens when we are required to expand and stretch our abilities and come out of our comfort zone. But this is actually, if you think about it, this is actually our opportunity to grow. So before we talk about silencing that inner critic, I want to acknowledge the fact that this imposter syndrome that we are all afraid of is actually a sign that we are growing. And a healthy level of stress is actually beneficial for us and moves us forward. So we need to use it to kind of challenge our imposter syndrome. And I want to recommend a book by Rita Clifton called Love Your Imposter. It's exactly talk about that. But it's also important to, not to let that imposter syndrome take over us. So I'd love to share with you some tools that I use that help me overcome imposter syndrome and not let it really overtake and inhibit my abilities. So the first thing is really to track and collect our accomplishments. So, we all lead very, very busy life, and we often don't have the time to stop and think of everything that we've achieved. And it is also very, very natural for us that once our efforts turned into success, we just forget about them and we continue to the next goal. But we really must cultivate the memory of the successful experience, because this gives us that confidence and fuel that we need for future successes. So how can we do that? So first of all, I want you to actually write in the chat box, if you haven't already, anything that you're proud of, even small, big, career-related credentials or something personal that you've done. I'd love to see that, because this is the start. We should get into the habit of collating those achievements or small successes by setting 20 minutes in the weekend to write them down. And that goes to the commitment that we talked about before. Or collecting positive emails from colleagues in a dedicated folder, good feedback that you receive. Or ask friends about a time when you had a positive impact on them and add these to your list. And then go off and celebrate them, what we talked about before, making sure that you send an evidence to your brain that you are capable. And you can draw on this kind of confidence backpack that we can call it, that list of yours. You can draw on this whenever imposter syndrome kicks in. And the other thing I would say about imposter syndrome is let go of that inner perfectionist. Say yes to new opportunities that really fit in with your passion and career goals. Because in every new task that we start, there is an element that we just don't know. So accept that you're not perfect and you always in learning mode. So release that self-judgment. And what really helps me, if I'm overwhelmed with a task or a big role that I got, I really set myself realistic and achievable milestones instead of thinking of the big task at hand. So for example, a few years ago, I was asked to write an article for a newsletter. And then, self-doubt kicked in. Who am I to write an article? Do I know enough? And then I decided to break it into tasks. I can do research. I can do interviews. I can summarize it all. I can edit. I can ask someone to look over it. So I can do the article. And this seemed much more realistic to me than to think I need to write an article. And the last kind of piece of tip that I want to share that, sometimes I'm a little bit cynical about it, but it's important to say. So, many talk about turning our negative thoughts into more supportive thoughts. And I know that, when people tell you think positive, it's so easy to say it, but it's really hard to actually do it, right? But we do need to remind ourselves that as humans, our brain has the ability to change and adapt our thought patterns and what we call neuroplasticity. So this means we can direct our attention to more self-supportive and compassionate thoughts towards ourselves and really decrease our self-criticism. So how can we do that? So first of all, we recognize the signs of that negative self-talk when it comes, and then we distance ourselves from that. For example, we can talk to ourselves in the third person and giving yourself the same empathy and sympathy that you would give to your friend if they come to you and say, I don't feel I'm good enough. And by the way, high performers are known to use this technique. And you can also name your inner critic. And I know it sounds funny, but you can name your inner critic and have a conversation with it. Remind them of everything that you've done and you have achieved that brought you here today, that you deserve that spot, and prove that inner critic wrong. And also remember that words have power. So change the words from, I should be more creative, I have to make the design perfect, I must succeed, I should work more hours, to I choose to, I need to, when can I, or I decide. This really helps you take full commitment and ownership of what you do. And really kind of quietens down that imposter syndrome that is an essential part of our progress.
Absolutely. Wow. Thank you so much, Eleanor. So to answer you put out a question in the beginning saying, can you name a moment that your imposter syndrome or the voice of your imposter syndrome was rearing its head? So Julia writes, in my previous role, I had picked out specific people that I assumed my managers wanted in my role instead of me because I viewed them as smarter, better, faster. Do you want to comment on that before I move on to the others?
You can read. I want to kind of hear everyone.
Okay. So that's the one comment we got on that response. And then when you asked for, share something you're proud about, we've got a bunch here. So Carrie writes, being able to influence change by leading from behind. Julia writes, I ran a marathon once. Jenny writes, earned a master's degree in my 20s. Susan writes, a returnship at TechCo after break to raise family. Tiffany writes, I completed a 10-week fitness challenge last week. It was strength training 5 days a week, brutal. John writes, delivered a user group today. It went well. And I know that I'm good at facilitating these types of customer sessions and connecting the dots between people. Tamara writes, I learned to play the piano over the past month. And then Carrie writes, after 3 years of lessons, I can plink the piano, but I cannot play. Good job. Madeline writes, I learned how to make chocolate starting with cacao beans. Jenny writes, I love the idea of arguing against your inner critic. Sometimes it just needs to pipe down. And I can also echo that. I learned that as well. I asked my inner critic to take the back seat. It's like, all right, you're not going to drive this vehicle. Take the back seat, take a nap, get out of my head. I need to focus. So I love that you're highlighting that. And it looks like Jenny uses that technique as well. Tiffany writes, sometimes imposter syndrome can reveal there is or are areas that you need to improve and work on. Thank you everyone for writing in the chat box. I'm going to pass the mic to you, Eleanor, to reflect on that.
Wow, this is brilliant. I'm so happy that you all share that. And really, this is a beginning of a journey for you, because I would like you to take that feeling of doing that, and later on you can say it to someone and really own it, and make it a habit of collating those achievements and then reflecting on them. And I personally, I have a Canva, like a little nice designed flyer that I put there my small accomplishments. And it really helps me when, whenever I'm down or I'm feeling a little bit insecure, then you go back and you look at it, and you can also put a picture of yourself there. It's like a celebration of yourself, just to yourself, to have a look and refer back. So I'd love to go to the next question, because I see that we have 10 minutes, and I'd love
We've got about 10 minutes. And actually, John asks a really great question that I'm sure other folks are tinkering with as well. So he writes, there's a sense that some level of imposter syndrome is normal and okay, right? If I had zero of those feelings, would I be a sociopath?
But that's exactly what we were saying. Exactly, you hit it. Really, it's so true. It's so normal that I would actually be concerned if I didn't have it, because it would also mean that I am not outside of my comfort zone enough also. I'm just in my little bubble, or maybe not aware. So certainly, and that's what I said before, it's about that little level of stress / imposter syndrome that's really healthy for us. And it's a signal that we are growing.
Beautiful. All right. So we do have about 10 minutes left. So let's hit this last question here. And also, if you want to come off of mute, feel free to do so, as now is your time to shine. So what are the don'ts of self-promotion?
Yes, so it's such a brilliant question. So obviously this is very, very subjective. Yeah, we all have different objectives and different personalities, and we all live in different cultures, and we have different styles. But generally speaking, there are a few things that I find that work better than others, and some things that just don't really work. So the first thing I would try to avoid is the humble bragging. It's basically manufactured modesty that hides over bragging. So, wow, I can't believe a huge media event asked little old me to attend as a VIP. So I think it's this dishonesty that bothers people. And if you have been invited to a prestigious event, say it. If you won an award or taken home the top prize, say it. Apologizing for it or hiding success, it's really not necessary. So really it's all about being perceived as genuine, because this is a really critical factor in determining the success of self-promotion. Whether you are in an interview, in a team meeting, in social media, just be yourself. There's no need to kind of humble brag. And the second thing is, a lot of people, tend to speak, not a lot, but some people feel comfortable speaking about the vulnerabilities and their struggles online or, wherever. But in my opinion, it's better to speak about, to share scars than wounds. So avoid sharing when you are at the peak of a struggle. Instead, talk about how you overcame your struggle. Emphasize the hard work, the lessons that you've learned and still learning, and how you hope to inspire others. And I wouldn't necessarily use kind of overly emotive language. I would just let the kind of breaking news speak for itself and really try and keep things simple and to the point. And quite a few people ask me about the I and the we game. You know, when do we talk about the I? When do we talk about the we? And it takes a lot of energy from us to really do it right, especially in team meetings when we are together with a team and no work is done just by yourself. You are always part of a team. But generally speaking, even if you are part of a team, there is always an element that you have been accountable for or in charge of. And this is what you need to ensure that you convey when you promote yourself externally or internally. So for example, you could say something like, our team has finally launched this product and I was delighted to lead on our stakeholder relations. Or I've just managed to finally close that deal. A big shout out to those who've worked hard to help me make this happen. So really try and find that balance, and it takes energy, and it's okay because it's about understanding, the context where you are and what is right also in your organizational culture.
Beautiful. I love that intentionality, right? Being intentional, and that leads us to so many different frontiers, I believe. So thank you for highlighting that. So Julia writes, if we have time for another question, which I believe we do, I'm going to flag this to you, Eleanor, which is a great question. So what are the ways that you can capture those accomplishments? I heard you mention putting recognition emails in a specific folder, and you have a list for quick reference, to have a list for a quick reference. What are other intentional ways that you can remember to capture those accomplishments in real time?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So I would really like to just go on to specific exercises that I do that often help us to remember that and to work on that muscle that we talked about before. So first of all, you can do a remarkable day. Yeah, so you have a day that you dedicate to yourself. Not a whole day, of course, just a couple of minutes in the day. And you can take a group of colleagues and friends with you and share your achievements regularly, whether it's small or big, whether it's about getting over a tough conversation or nailing a deal. So create that safe space with no judgment, but where you are accountable to sharing. And you can also set up a communication channel for this, whether it's a WhatsApp, you can record yourself in voice note, and it will also enable you to take pride in what you do and become more comfortable in accepting compliments and accepting others when they self-promote. So that's a good kind of exercise. And then we talked about keeping a log of our accomplishments so you have it ready when you need it. So allow that time to reflect on what makes you unique and what you're proud of. And it doesn't have to be, all the big things that we talked about. It's what stands out to you about your journey and background. What have been the most pivotal experiences in your life? What are the 3 times that you've taken a strong stand about something? You can also email 10 people, either colleagues or friends, to ask them about a situation where you made an impact on them. And then write down all your achievements to date on a document that is really nicely designed. So do that, dedicate an hour to just do a whole list and then update it as you go along, because it's super important. By the way, it's also important when you have that, review at work, performance review at work. You can go back and look at everything that you've achieved and practice. Review your achievements to make them as clear and as compelling. It's really about storytelling if you think about it, craft your personal story in a way that is comfortable for you, in a platform that is right for you, whether it's media posts or public speaking, or some networks have spotlight on certain members, or article writing. And gradually also try and kind of push yourself outside of that comfort zone and try a new platform. And also another way is that I do it, and some people ask me to send them, is make a short list of people who do self-promotion right in your view, or who you're inspired by, and make a note what you think they do well, and then you can use a similar language in talking about yourself. And the last thing I would say on that is really step outside of your comfort zone. I really encourage you to that and consider, what you want to accomplish. Put yourself forward to try something new, and then use your self-promotion skills to achieve it.
Beautiful, beautifully said. Okay, so John would like to show a quick example of some visualization that he uses. Go ahead, go for it, John.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, because like I just get this in waves. It's not an ever always there thing. It's just at times, especially if I'm tired, if I've had a few challenges thrown my way, that your ability to respond goes down. So it's a bit kind of weird, but so I think back to a time when I was in the UK. I used to do a lot of walking when I was young. I used to climb up mountains and stuff, and I vividly remember a time getting to the top of one of the highest peaks in the UK, and literally being able to run down that mountain afterwards. And I kind of almost like close my eyes and remember the sense of energy, the cold air, the not even having to think about like jogging down. I put my feet, and it immediately kind of gets me back mentally to a place of, I am like capable, I am like incredible at the time. I can't run down mountains anymore. I'm quite old and fat now, but so that again, it's just that like mental image of like literally imagining yourself in that situation where you felt like nothing on this planet could stop you, and just putting yourself back into that state.
This is amazing. I love that. I wish, everybody should really reflect on what, their mindsets are and where they feel the strongest and the most, powerful. Love that. Thank you for sharing, John.
Yes, thank you so much, John. I love that. I love working with visualizations as well, because we tend to forget. We're so busy, as you mentioned, Eleanor, and we forget to remember our successes, and we forget that we need to redefine our successes so that we can make sure that we are experiencing a holistic lifestyle. I've learned a lot in this past hour, and I told you all that the hour is going to fly by. So, Eleanor, let us know how we can follow you now that we're ending this chat. How can we support the good work that you're doing?
So yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, and I'd love to, to have you in one of my workshops. This is all voluntary. There's no charge, and just, join me and practice that self-promotion, and also go home now and practice, whether with your co-workers or your friends and family on social media or work meetings. Don't let that energy, fade. Use it.
Yes, thank you all so much. Okay, so I hope to see you all in the next chat. Eleanor, thank you so much. And thanks to everyone.